Management Association and sharing your experiences with the group.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for giving this an opportunity. And I'm really honored to be part of this whole, I would say, as I said to you while I was speaking to you a little while back, that it is all about bringing the ecosystem together. And I see this whole ecosystem as ecosystem of education practitioners, students, people from the corporate, and we in the sense the producers of this knowledge. So it is a collective learning, and I really see that ecosystem or leveraging ecosystem using a platform is already in action. Thank you very much. So I would like to share the screen. Let me know when the screen is visible. Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Okay. So thanks again. I hope it will not be too heavy as a session, and I will try to keep it light, though the topic itself is a very, very complex topic, and it branches out into different areas. So it is just an introduction to how some of the companies are leveraging the ecosystem and are really creating or charting the path and showing that how ecosystem can be leveraged in a place or in the time when we are all talking about scarce resources. So I start with a very numerative example and thought so that we understand what is an exponential growth. So I call it Tale of Two Cities because of what you will see now is a table. And this table is nothing but 4 metadata that I have picked up from the public document. So what you see on the exact left is the name of the companies. And if you see the name of the companies, they, the row 1, row 2 are having the same objectives, larger objective of moving people from one point to another point. The second 2 set is the people who make available houses and rooms, availability of rooms. The third is all about how you create and disseminate content. And the 4th group of companies are the companies who share memories, share images, and share experiences. And what you see in the next 3 columns is where I call the exponential growth. I mean, while we can always say the growth is more to do with the revenue, but when we talk about value or how you generate value, I think the best indicator to show the value is the market capitalization. And what you see here is some numbers which will give you what exponential growth means. You talk about BMW, I think it is one of the most respected names in the automotive, but look at the year of establishment and look at the year of establishment of Uber. Look at the number of employees that BMW has across the different continents and look at the number of employees that Uber has. And if you see the market capitalization, it's almost same. And the story is same for all those companies, which most of us who are practitioners call these sets of companies as digital born companies, just like our Xenex, who have born at a time when computers and mobile were always there. So what is the difference, or what is this exponential growth story all about? And what we have been, and most of you might be following this, that these are some set of companies, whether it is Uber, whether it is Instagram, whether it is Facebook. And it is not only, and most of the people today are arguing that it is all about network effect. But there is more than that. And I think most of the people in this forum might understand what is a network effect. It is an effect which goes where like a chain reaction. And I can see some views. But I think if there are any questions, I would like someone to let me know if there are questions and I can stop. And I want this to be more interactive. So what we essentially understand from this table is that the exponential growth is all about hyperproductivity. And that is where I come to the next slide, that the reason these companies or the digital born firms are generating hyperproductivity is because of ecosystem leverage that they have done over a period of time. So how do we explain this? We explain this through higher value, which is the numerator. So what is that thing different that these companies are doing, which largest set of traditional companies or somebody puts it correctly, like a pipeline companies do with a very linear value chain? There is a difference that what these companies have been practicing is that they are allowing the value to be created outside their system or outside the periphery of their. And I will give an example, a very simple example of Airbnb, which we all have experienced at some point of time. What it does, the value is not created by Airbnb. The value is actually created by the producers or the people who make the rooms available. And the value is consumed by a set of people like us who travel different places and then take it. So what you see is Airbnb is allowing the value to be created, or the spare capacity which is with many other producers, to be created outside the system, which means they in a way they are trying to reduce the assets in their balance sheet. If we go to the denominator, what they are doing today, they're sharing the value which is created, or the creators of the value are also being shared amongst different partners. So as the ecosystem of Airbnb, and I will stick with the same example, as the ecosystem of the Airbnb increases, they're working with some of the very digital locker type of companies who allow with the sensing and biometrics, they are able to understand when the owner of that, or rather the renter of that apartment comes, and with imaging equipments, they are able to open the locks, which is called as a digital key. So all this is created by some other third party, or these are created by what we call as producers in the ecosystem language. So the value creation is also distributed outside Airbnb. And that is why what we saw in the last chart, that they have just 7,000 people. But most of these value creators are the partners who are all distributed in the different geographies, and they bring their best so that the value is added into the system. And at the same time, the third variable of this equation is about the time. Now, how do they do this versus what the traditional companies do is a little different. They have gone in a very agile way, and they have created a feedback system. So initially, they come with a very core idea of what they are going to serve. And then they phase out the different functions and features that is required by the people, by the feedback of the people, and the interaction that happens between the producers and the consumers. And that is what the whole idea of pro-consumers are becoming. Like sometimes the consumer itself are the ones who give ideation for new applications, new services which are offered on these platforms. So the whole idea of hyper productivity is where the value or the maximization of the value starts. And some of these companies, the digital bound companies, have actually taken advantage of the technology boom, or the availability of the technology and faster processing of the computerization. So what we understand from this is that while this hyperproductivity is a very important part of leveraging the ecosystem, and you should have your own strategy to provide this. Now, I'll come to the other part of what our observation is in terms of how they are being separated from the type of companies that we see in the majority. There is a shift in the mindset, and what you would actually recollect from the industrial revolution time, that most of the big companies, the giants of industrial revolution, they all became large by competing on scarcity. It's an important point to note, because what they have done, and this is a classical example of how the companies have become bigger and bigger in their sizes, because what they have done is they have aggregated the resources. The core competent resources are brought inside the organization, and they are reserved. And that is how they create a monopoly, and they create a kind of what we see is a barrier for entry. So the competition till now was mostly on competing on scarcity of the resources. The shift of the mindset of this digital bond companies is on the shift of abundance. I don't know, but there are a lot of people who may be following Peter Diamandis of Singular University. So Peter Diamandis talks about this abundance in a great length, and if you understand what he says, I think this is all about abundance. What the central theme of the theory of abundance is that there is enough for everyone, and even our biological ecosystem also teaches us the same thing. It is about how complicated the interaction and interconnectedness and the interdependency is. It takes more time to understand where is the symbiotic relationship, how the partners can come together. So what these set of companies have really, and I would say, some people are joining the bandwagon. Some companies are actually following some of these companies, but not all of them are successful. So we cannot have a clear statement that platform is a sure shot ticket for exponential growth. They have understood this mindset of abundance. They are able to disaggregate the different resources which are scarce, and they have created a platform for people to join. So how do I see this whole thing is that the brick and mortar or the linear companies have always tried to optimize their process to create a value. While what these companies are doing differently are they are optimizing the interactions between the partners of the ecosystem, which is lot of, if you are bringing value, a lot of consumers will join, and with the network effect, if they like the product, there will be more producers who will come into the platform and they will create more innovative products, and that is how the interaction starts. So the way this generation of entrepreneurs or companies who have brought this whole competency of leveraging ecosystem are completely shifting their mindset of optimization of process to optimization of interactions. Another observation that we are seeing is that they are more fluidic, meaning they would start with something as an idea, and that can be a core idea, but as they move from, they start moving out from the siloed box of the organization, and they move out with an holistic mindset. And this is the holistic mindset where you do not see the consumers having a very, very linear customer journey. Even the customers are changing, and they're dynamically changing their way of consuming the products, consuming the services, consuming the experiences. And that is where these companies have been putting a lot of effort in understanding the consumer journeys, the dynamicity of the consumer journey, and moving towards a more holistic mindset. They are seeing consumers and their relation and interdependence on different things. The other part of this holistic mindset is they are also discovering some of the wicked problems, as I call. These are the problems that there are some unmet needs. And I remember one of the phrase where it is important that today the producers or the marketers should understand the want of the customer even before they understand it. So this is the mindset that they are able to really work on. So that is where my view is that they're moving to a greater openness. Another point is they're shifting from linear thinking to circular thinking. And in the circular economy, what they want is a sustainable growth. So when they are moving from linear to circular thinking, they are always thinking about the feedbacks. And they're all, and thanks to Internet of Things, you are able to now take feedbacks from people, from things. I'm assuming that the economy in next 20 or 30 years will be such that the human body will be all about variables, and will be able to transmit all those things which are required for any health practitioner to see, or even sometimes if the infringement of privacy doesn't happen, even the emotions of our human being is something that people can follow. So there is a huge amount of feedback thinking and being very agile to change the way the business models are. So they have been moving out from this linear thinking of value chain, extended supply chain, and making more a value network. And the third important shift that we are seeing in these type of companies are they're moving away from isolation to collaboration. What it means is that they have started with with a very small offering or a very robust experience for the customer. The customer have started coming on, but they have not thought that everything that a customer wants, they will be able to give. And that is where they are collaborating, and most of them are collaborating with some new age entrepreneurs. There are a lot of startups who are being a part of this whole ecosystem. They're learning from different when if it comes to the movement of material, they're learning from the logistic partners. So they are able to collaborate with a synergistic view, just like any biological ecosystem works. So that is the shift in a mindset that is enabling these set of companies. And I would say that even the traditional companies are also walking the footstep, but the reasons of their movement towards exponential growth is little less than this new age economic. And that is where the yeah. Is there any question? No. Okay. So what I am going to do in this slide, and if everyone can see my slide number 5, what is that the current traditional large enterprises are not able to leverage the ecosystem, because and as I said, that there are some of the organization that we are working with, and some of them are already in public, so I can actually name them, some of them. Some of the examples that come to my mind is Walgreen, which is the drug chain of the Walmart. They have really completely changed the way they started the business from their core offerings of only pharmaceutical solutions. Similarly, if I see one of our own customers, John Deere is one of the most fascinating companies who have brought in their ecosystem to such that they are no more a tractor company, and they have become more like a specialist in farming exponential growth, meaning they are allowing the whole ecosystem of farm management. And I might go into that example also further into this presentation. But now they are more like a solution platform for the farm owners, and they brought a large part of the ecosystem, right from seed management to irrigation management, to consultants, to advisors to the farmer, and all of them, they are there to help the productivity of the farm or the agricultural productivity. So while some of them are, and I spoke about BMW also, they have also moved into leveraging ecosystem. But what we have seen, a common fallacies or common misconception that traditional companies, and I'm talking to many of the Japanese customers also, including one of the customers, I spoke about John Deere, their competitor Kubota, and same with Caterpillar. So there are when we talk to these people, what we see is they're still trapped with the product-centric approach, which is a very supply economy thing, that you start with the product in mind and not user in mind. Because user is not only looking at your product and your solution, the user has a completely different view, and this view keeps on changing. So the mindset of some of these companies are stopping them to leverage these ecosystem benefits. So they're trapped with the product-centric approach. And because they're trapped with the product-centric approach, they feel they should be, and they assume that they need to be the orchestrator of the ecosystem. Because they think that the main core product is their product, and every solution or services can be around that. But sometimes this is not true, because the industry dimensions or industry circumferences are also shrinking. There are a lot of cross-functional or cross-vertical industries which are coming together, and the whole idea is moving from product and vertical to the experience. The idea at the end of the end of the tunnel should be, what is that experience that we are able to bring into the group of customers or group of ecosystem partners. That is something that we are missing, and some of them are failing right at the front end of the whole journey. Also, I talked a little bit about the idea of shallow customer value proposition. So looking at customer from what he wants today is another real problem that we are seeing. And within TCS also, we have organization within TCS. We talk about ecosystem, and ecosystem is not one linear way. So when customer sees there are we call it a clay model because it was propagated by Christian Claytonson. So as the industry matures, there are industries, the new industries which require that similar solution in a different way. And then there are some customers who have unmet needs or uncharted needs, and there are uncharted solutions. So if those are there, you cannot do with just linear capture of the customer journey. So customer has to be studied deep, and it is like, you go deep or you go home. That's the kind of situation we are in. Also, in some places, we see that there is a failure to prioritize the feature over the immediate. The question that the CFO would ask, that yes, and because when we say leveraging ecosystem, the immediate point is that there has to be some way in which the ecosystem partners interact, and it is about the digital platforms many a times, not all of the times. But there is an investment, there is an upfront investment, and failing to prioritize that future over immediate is something that actually puts a cog in the wheel. And that is where the prioritization of future over the immediate becomes a very important part, that these companies should be ready to prioritize the future and should be keeping the optimization path into a separate zone. So there is always two layers to every business. The part of the engine or the part of the wheel that transforms, and the part of the wheel which runs the business. We call it run the business or change the business. So the change of the business has to take the priority here. Another point that we are seeing where some companies are failing in leveraging the ecosystem is the primary question is about profit maximization. There is a debate. Definitely the CFO will always approach and say that what is the profit that I am getting? And believe me, many of these companies who have gone live in the stock market, they have not made enough money in the beginning. Because I think the end game and why they get so much of money from the market, private equity or investment market, is because these people are seeing value maximization. Because the whole idea of ecosystem is, unless ecosystem has enough number of partners and consumers, you cannot really make profit. and the people would come to platform. People will come hooked on the platform only when they see value. So the whole chicken and egg is whether you should start with the profit or you should start looking into value maximization. That is the answer that they should, or that should be the debate inside the organization, which is not happening in most of the traditional organizations. The other point that I have seen when I talk to a lot of these people who want to join the bandwagon, but really think very differently. They cannot appreciate the fact that the ecosystems cannot be entirely planned and designed upfront. And it follows the law of nature. I think our own evolution as an ecosystem has been very slow, and it has been over a period of time where interconnectedness between the different organisms on the earth has happened, and then there is a shared interdependence. So these 2 points are very important: the interconnectedness and interdependence. So the fact that we do not have a complete charter is something disturbing to a lot of leaders or management leaders, I would say. There are thinkers in many organizations, and then there are management leaders. So management people would always want a plan first. And believe me, most of the organizations who have seen the success, I think they have chartered into the new areas, even if they started with their core competency. And that is where I come to the point that core competency is no more a competitive advantage. And believe me, what I learned in my B school back in those years was all about core competence, and I'm unlearning myself now. So while core competency is something that definitely allows you in the beginning, but the competitive advantage of today or in the future, and we are seeing this in next 20 years, it will be who captures ecosystem, or who have the best of the ecosystem, and the ecosystem partners are sticky. So one thing is acquiring a right set of ecosystem partner, and the second part is that is more important is how do you make sure that they remain engaged. So so that is very important point here, that core competency is one what traditional companies are looking at as a competitive advantage, while the reality is that in the future it will be all about ecosystem. While I don't know whether I missed point, the last point is very important, and that is about a bolt-on approach. Because when we are going with the traditional companies, and there is an inherent disadvantage, I would definitely appreciate and accept. They have a lot of legacy, and with them, they have their own systems which are isolated systems, or they're not very well integrated. But the problem is that they would always like to bolt on the digital ecosystem on this, which is a very challenging proposition. And not only challenging, it is a very, very costly proposition. So the misconception here is that ecosystem thinking or ecosystem platform thinking is all about offline to online. It is not actually. It is all about how you are optimizing the interactions. And this interactions can come from anywhere. It is not only the customers, it is about the customer's environment, and what happens around him is very important, where you have to bring in these interactions live. So what I did in this slide is talking about what is while there are a lot of people who would like to join the bandwagon of exponential growth, but this whole idea that everyone will make money is not the case. And believe me, and a lot of numbers are already there in the thought leadership papers of same thing, that the success rate is not more than 20 or 30%. Even 20 or 30 is too high. Out of every 10 companies, 6 really don't make it to that large. They all start. I mean, the launching does happen to many, but the amount of the money that the venture capitalists have lost in making available money to them is humongous. And that is why nowadays there is a lot of checks and balances, and I will come to those points also as we progress into the presentation. So very quickly, what I thought, and I don't want to make it very simplistic, but there should be some way to see where actually ecosystem makes a more superior value. So the idea is all about orchestration and componentalization, which means how do you see your offering, solutions, product, proposition to the market? Can it be modular? Can it be broken into the pieces so the production can be taken outside the organization? And that is where, I mean, examples of YouTube are being taken, because the publishing company 10 years or 15 years was all about editors controlling everything. I mean, outside the content platforms, which means the consumers are in themselves making the product, which is here at the content. So the ease of componentalization is one axis, and the degree of orchestration. So these are the two axes that I can think of, on the basis of which we can make a very good view of whether we should go gung-ho about leveraging ecosystem. And while we all of these, and I'm not saying that these companies who are who requires a lot of orchestration, and componentalization is, or modularization is not easy, they should not take advantage of ecosystem. But what I'm trying to say is that they cannot think about exponential profit to start with. And what will happen is, over a period of time, and I'll come to that slide, over a period of time, as you get portfolio, you start having a portfolio approach, definitely you will be having growth. But if you are very product centered, you will definitely meet with an accident, and you will lose a lot of money if you are thinking of going into platform business. So a simple thing is that for those companies where the degree of orchestration is humongous, and the componentalization is less, I think those will take a very they may be very cautious about jumping into the bandwagon, and they will be at least better off till they understand the entire ecosystem properly, by either having a tiered supply chain, or even disintegrating the vertical integration. They may not have the complete vertical integration, but they can have suppliers, but the product is vertically integrated. Where the ease of computerization is more, and which is where we see the first generation market, whether you have eBay, whether you had MySpace in those days, or now we have seen Alibaba, Facebook. These are open market. And the business ecosystem is where there is a huge degree of orchestration, like disease management, where you cannot leave the consumers and the producers only to interact. There has to be a lot of checks and balances, because it directly impacts the patient. So that is where the business ecosystem really is the most. It's a sweet spot for that. So this is just a directional view of how do you make a right kind of value maximization view, and how do you strategize building your ecosystem partnership. So while I spoke about Boeing, not that Boeing is not getting into an ecosystem partnership, it is going, but what it is doing is that it is also moving out from its core competency of making aircraft to become a solution providers. And there is a lot of writing about how Boeing is using or taking an advantage of the platform. But I think what is happening now in the industry, which is capital intensive, is that they are getting into product as a service or service solutions. But again, these are not so difficult, not so easy when the asset is on your balance sheet. Because if a huge asset is on your balance sheet, it becomes very difficult to really make it available or componentalize it. While I really don't want to get into each of these points, but what we have studied and what we see from even some of the closeness, that where there is a success and where there is some caution, not that the ecosystem doesn't offer any profits, it does, but it is very faster where the value generation from information is relatively high. And it doesn't mean that it's, while I put some example as news and media, but I can definitely quote an example of oil and gas. Oil and gas is very capital intensive industry, but if I see it in a very different way of finding the right oil, or where the oil can be really extracted, that is all about data. Because there is a huge amount of geospatial data, there is a huge amount of soil information data, and this data today is generating a lot of advantage to these companies who are able to bring data to be making some of the decision making. So value generation from the information, if it is relatively high, it is easier for them to make more ecosystem profit. Similarly, as I pointed out in the previous slide, if the output is modular, whether it is a ride or whether it is a remote controls, and there is a story of remote controls, how one can really make a difference of remote controlling the entire ecosystem around you. Then we have examples where the industry is not that highly regulated and it is fault tolerant. So these like food delivery chains, and we are seeing Zomato, we are seeing Swiggy in India, and these are some of the companies, and even Uber has gone into the food delivery because it's something which is not that highly regulated. But I mean, vis-a-vis, if you see power plants or a highly regulated industry, it's very difficult because experiments can be fatal. While in a lightly regulated, it is easier to do some kind of an experiments. So there is some view that where it is easier to make an ecosystem profit, and where the scale of profit differs and takes a little longer period. Again, where the utilization level is low or the spare capacity is high, it is much easier to take the advantage of the low cost of transaction for this spare capacity. So with that, I come to the very core of what we also think within TCS, and you will be able to see the same view in a different way in TCS proposition of how we see as the three horizons. While I have shown it as a pyramid, actually horizons should be always in a axis of time, but excuse me for that. But the idea here is very clearly following the ecosystem, natural ecosystem, is that first you optimize yourselves or you make yourselves ready to start discovery. So even for the traditional companies, what we have understood from our experiences, and as I spoke, that a lot of them are having a lot of legacy with them. They have a lot of baggage of their product and the competency with them, which means it's an elephant. And definitely what is the first baby step or the first thing that they should do is make sure that the interactions are digitized. Today I'm seeing a lot of companies, at least in the brick and mortar, where the whole enterprise system itself is not completely digitized. They've left a lot of room for manual interventions, and therefore the interactions within the organization, with the customers, with the suppliers, are not completely kind of digitized, and therefore you're not able to learn anything from the interactions. So what we are seeing is a natural evolution. So the first stage is where you are building efficiency by digitizing the core, where either your assets, your actions, your processes, your interactions have to be first digitized. I think that's the foundational point that many companies have to build, who have a huge aspiration for joining the whole race of platform, but at the same time they are not ready. I think that's what we call an efficiency. The next stage is when you start evolving, and in the next slide I will talk about a industry or a company, how it did it. So the next stage is when you start actually integrating the flow across enterprise. And when I say this is when we say this ecosystem, the products are becoming smarter, and with an IoT coming into picture, your own products or own service information related to that can be really brought in, and the interactions of the product with the consumer, with the other partners, or even in case of automobile, it can be dealers. So all of these interactions, when you bring it into under a single view of ecosystem, you start learning a lot of things. And when you curate and contextualize this, you will find that you have a lot of offerings and solutions which are not your core competency, but can be orchestrated through the platform. And that is where you unlock new revenue stream. And that is what I was talking when I was talking about Boeing, that while it is very difficult for them to leverage the ecosystem, what they are doing is they are unlocking the new revenue streams and expanding the addressable customer base. So they are actually finding new set of customers or increasing people coming on the platform beyond the existing customers who are just airline people. And that is where the creation of the business model happens. And again, it follows the same evolution of ecosystem. The evolution where you start doing new things. We started, inventing fire, and then we started cooking, and then we started making steels, and so those are evolution part. So the creating new business model is also evolutionary. And once you have enough interactions from source of consumption, as your interface is very close to the consumption, and you are able to see the producers of these value added services, and you understand the context of the customer's new journey, that's when you are in a position to orchestrate this interaction. And then comes the point of completely externalization, and bring that whole democracy. And that is where the purpose based ecosystem, because the purpose is much bigger than your current objective. And once you start getting at the level of purpose, you definitely cannot, and when I say purpose, it is some of the big problems that you want to solve. I think I remember the story of eBay, and I when I was a growing kid, buying a second hand thing was very difficult. And even when my daughter used to say that finding what I want in the book is so difficult, and that I want to go to an e-textbook and type search. So there is a this is definitely a wicked problem in my opinion, that the purpose in those days was completely not being able, and thanks to the digital revolution, these are being able to be fulfilled. So harnessing value in the ecosystem and orchestrating a new value flow is something that they are doing. So when I was saying this, the whole hotel industry, the way it is moving, I think even booking a hotel in those days, or making a trip, was a very, very, very difficult thing. And this is what I think Airbnb saw. Without having any effort, they were able to bring this whole experience to the customer, a much more happier experience, and less of moments of tension. So if you see, the value maximization keeps on improving as you reach this type of prices, and that is what we call as 3 prices. Now, if you see, the advantage of the digital born companies is that they had an inherent advantage to start up with the purpose, because they didn't have any legacy. So they did not have to, because they started itself with everything digitized, and therefore they could directly get into bringing people on their ecosystem and creating new business models. So that is what has happened, and that is why they are ahead in the race of making that kind of exponential profit. But at the same time, I would say even the traditional companies are catching up with them, and they definitely would be able to orchestrate a larger ecosystem as we see bigger purposes coming. And one of that is definitely mobility, where a lot of companies, automotive companies, are putting a lot of money in not selling cars, in creating the whole gamut of solution of mobility. And again, there is a purpose in that, that they are not thinking of only mobility from the position of their asset, which is car. A lot of now solutions are going where BMW, Volkswagen Group, they are all now building, and even in Japan, I am seeing there is a consortium where a lot of competitors are coming together to build this whole ecosystem. So sometimes, as we mature, there is an ecosystem relationship or interdependence, even between the competitors, and that is where the externalization brings a lot of value. So as I said, I would I don't know if I'm doing good in terms of time, but what I wanted to do is take this journey through an example, and this is where a story of a company. While I don't want to name the company, because we have some affiliation with that company, and the company doesn't want us to talk about their thing. So here is the stage by stage evolution of this company. It started with what is called as mountaineering rope. That was the core competency of this company in the beginning, and they were very famous for their mountaineering rope. The way they saw the customers in those days is that, I think mountaineering 15 or 20 years, at least in India, was not that big. Would say part of recreation, but it has been a part of recreation globally, and in Japan definitely, because a lot of people go to mountaineering, not only in Japan but outside Japan also. So this company is it started with a rope, And then it started seeing that the customers are looking for other accessories and gadgets and things. So they started making more products. So still their orientation was more from a product perspective. And once they brought in more customers who were hooked onto this product and they found some novel products in thing, they built a very good initial process and interaction between the customers and their suppliers, because not all of it was made inside this company, like normally when it happens, make versus buy. So they were definitely bringing some of the product directly through their contractors. But when they saw this interaction, and when they found that a lot of people are, because they have these product available to them, there are more people joining this whole mountaineering recreational hobby. And that's when they started thinking that there will be always a newcomer who joins, and that's where the idea of the platform and the ecosystem thinking started very early. And since it was a smaller company, it was able to digitize its core very fast, and was able to digitize the interactions. What it learned over a period of time, and that is where the unlocking of the new revenue stream comes, is that these people, new set of people, they wanted training, which means you have to bring a set of, because it's not a core competency of this company. So they have to bring some other partners so that all the customers who want to absorb this or accept this or internalize this mountaineering would learn new things of what are those, because there are very technicalities in mountaineering. So they started with a training academy, and it became on the platform. Then they found that while these people make their itinerary, they would also want to know what are the places, how do we go, and the whole itinerary system, wherein a lot of companies who are weather companies, who are the companies who find out what are the places around that place, how good is that place to reach, and what kind of so that kind of information dissemination companies joined the bandwagon. Very soon, as the customer also matures, they found that they can even sell the insurance, and that's how the financial companies came into the ecosystem. So now it becomes a one-stop solution, and where they have given the there is always this whole concept where the control is passed on, and definitely with a very access-based view, but the producers are now talking directly with the consumers of this company. And believe me, all this was not their core competency, but the producers are now creating value. More consumers are joining, they are geographically increasing because the partnership is going beyond the geography barriers, and now this company is becoming bigger and bigger. Now the purpose is not mountaineering, the purpose now is recreation, and that opens all, beyond mountaineering as core offering. They are creating the whole solution ecosystem is all about recreation, and that recreation goes beyond mountaineering. So this is how the step-by-step view of evolution externalization has happened in this company in a very, very successful way. And I can definitely say this has all happened within a span of 12 years, and they have exponentially grown, bringing this type of creating business model and purpose-based system. Now, going into the very nuts and bolts, if we study at a very structural view, there is a shared value proposition, and it has to be shared because you have to bring a lot of partners on the platform. What the shared value proposition needs an alignment, which means all the ecosystem partners should understand what is the shared value proposition. It's not a value proposition that one single company can offer, and which is where it is very important that the idea of interdependency and interconnectedness comes into the picture, which I pointed out in the previous few slides. Once that is done, the orchestrator or the orchestration guarantees also the alignment, which means for alignment, they have to come together in one forum. That forum can be anything, but how do we bring some, and I'm because a lot of people misinterpret or interchangeably use that you need a digital ecosystem. No, if you see the story of Coca-Cola and the water preservation thing, it's not much on the platform, but bringing people together on one platform, which may not be sometimes a digital platform also. So what at a structural level, it is orchestration which guarantees an alignment. And then with this three important things coming together, the orchestrator is able to bring the complementers, and that's where the orchestrator's role become very important, that they ensure and preserve the alignment, not making sure that there is enough governance between the partners and the values are shared, the compensations are shared, and sometimes in a very complex, and I don't want to get into the complexity, but the complexity is that where you can become a complementer in another's ecosystem while you can be orchestrator of your own ecosystem. And this is how the interconnectedness will increase over a period of time, where every one can be a complementer, and at the same time and this is already happening. I mean, in China, if you see Alibaba or WeChat, they are all complementing each other on their platforms. So and it is not about one is bigger than the other. It is all about where do you want to shift the production part of the competency which is better with somebody else, and also onboard their consumers and producers together, so that you create a larger ecosystem. So that is very important part of this whole idea of purpose-based ecosystem, that you see everyone as equal, and you have a shared value, you have an alignment, whether that alignment happens through an orchestration through a digital platform or it happens physically. And the three important tenets for that, as we see and what we experience from some of these companies, talking to these companies, is the focus has to change from customer value to ecosystem value, because you cannot only keep your focus on customer, because there are producers, and sometimes the producers themselves are consumers, which means you have to also see or focus on one who is creating value also. And again, the focus is changing from internal optimization and moving towards an external interaction. And the third thing is from resource control to resource orchestration. So the job of the orchestrator itself is changing. They cannot have while they can govern it, but they cannot exercise the control, because once you exercise the control, there is a possibility that there is a friction in the ecosystem, and in the friction of the ecosystem, definitely if the people think that the others are not interdependent, they move out from the interconnectedness. And that is very important fundamental principles of ecosystem thinking. And finally, something, as I started, those who follow Peter Diamandis, he brings this whole aspect of interconnectedness between the shared interest and shared platform. But the more important part of why this all is becoming a reality, when I was talking before this whole session started, of democratization of access. And today, when I see this whole forum itself, or this whole session itself, the way I see is there is an access in LinkedIn, there is an access of BMA as a physical association, and they are connecting with the people. Today, your mobile and Zoom platform is allowing a democratization of access of people. With LinkedIn, we are able to reach out. With Facebook, we are able to reach out more people who we would have never known in our future. So you are able to bring different sets of value creators, and that democratization of access is already there. The second point, which is very important, is democratization of production. Because of the digital platforms, we are able to even democratize the production. And as we talked about, even Airbnb, or even if we are saying some of the brick and mortar companies, what they are doing is actually outsourcing, or if it is, as I said in the beginning, if the whole solution components are modular, some part of it is given outside, because those are not your core competence, because you have added new revenue streams, you have not developed a core competency, but your partner is putting importance in this. And democratization of this production is happening. The other thing that is taking place is democratization of intelligence, and which is where, while it is still not completely democratized, I see there are a lot of people who are trying to not leave the ownership of data, but with non-profit purpose-based ecosystem thinking, a lot of data is being available, not with definitely not breaking the laws of different countries, but how well the data can be shared without giving a personal information, and this intelligence can be really made use of. So there is a lot of data which is coming from Internet of Things, where every device, every product, everything is becoming smart. And I think this democratization of intelligence will happen more as we get into the 5G era, and when we see that all the information is taken at the source, and even the cloud will not be there. So democratization of or rather, I won't say cloud won't be there. The cloud will be distributed all across. So the democratization of intelligence is also playing an important role in actually understanding the behavior. And the last point is that because there is a democratization of intelligence, there is a democratization of production and access, there is a deeper insight into the overall transaction. And when we talk about transaction, it is not merely transaction meaning monetary transaction, it is a transaction of interactions. So from this, now what we see is that the ability to collectively learn from source of consumption of consumer is advancing exponentially. And again, as I was talking about this whole thing, this whole session is a collective learning. I mean, a lot of people are collecting together to learn some things. Today, I am speaking. Tomorrow, I'm the one who is the listener. So this is the whole pro-consumer part of it, where I produce content and I also absorb the content. And in this whole process, we are learning more things faster than what we were doing 15 years back. So while this platform is the center of enabling all of this, but it would not have happened, and that is the reason why it never happened in 2000 during the internet boom. Because with internet, again, it was all open, but the computation power or the computation Moore's law was not there at that point of time. The way the computation has become cheaper, the platform conception has become possible, but at the same time, this democratization of access, democratization of product, and democratization of intelligence and transaction from an ecosystem thinking perspective is becoming much and much prevalent and omnipresent. Can somebody tell me how am I doing in terms of time, because I don't have the watch, but if we are
I think we are currently at 7 o'clock, so maybe another 5-10 minutes you can take.
Sure, I will because I would want the main points to be covered, and then we can think whether we want to skip. I will take another 10 minutes.
Perfect.
So the last point that we wanted to bring in is that while it's a more technical topic, I wanted to keep it very simple because I don't have a very good understanding of what is the audience. So simplistically put, how does platform work? There is a producer, there is a consumer, and there is an orchestrator. Now, in an open platforms, what happens is that open-site platform, that producers and consumers are left to interact. But in case, that can sometimes result into wrong consequences. And therefore, the access and governance is very important part of it, which the orchestrator plays. And then there is a channel of consumption. The channels can be many ways of consuming the information. At the same time, what the orchestra does is we have put it into the 5 C's, is they allow or they govern or orchestrate the whole creation of the either product, solution, content, whatever it is. And they make sure that these are repeatable objects are created, because when you are in the sharing economy, and as I said, one of the first slide which I talked about is bringing to the market the solutions and services very fast. Unless you have some of the repeatable objects ready and made available, nobody will stick to your platform. So sometimes the producers would want these repeatable objects, and these are some of the technical objects, but definitely those are something which allows the producers to be more productive. And this is what the orchestrator plays an important role. The other thing is standardized experience. So the consumer, when he comes to, and this is what I have seen in China, WeChat, the experience, whether you are having a ride share, whether you are buying a grocery, whether you are getting into a financial institution, the experience is standardized for the consumer. So he doesn't have, and that is very, very important part, which brings me to the point, while it is not directly related to this topic. One of the important part which has changed is the user experience part. Because today consumers are not ready to be with you if you are not able to understand them and make their whole journey very optimized. So standardized experience is something that the orchestrator has to make sure that it makes available for the consumers. So tools and services for consumption, tools and services for curation, and how do you make sure that you compensate all the ecosystem partners well? And that is where in my previous slide I spoke about that the whole idea moves from not only thinking about the consumer, but also thinking about the entire value creation ecosystem. So how do we compensate different producers of the ecosystem, and at the same time capture the interactions and capture the performances of the information? Like I mean, see, it's something very clear, but we don't get into that part very easily. When somebody takes an Uber ride, we give some kind of scoring to them, and that scoring helps Uber to actually move some producers from the platform outside the platform, meaning the drivers who are not performing well or who are not giving that kind of a satisfaction. Because here is the driver who are the producers. It's not the Uber or it's not Ola for that reason. So what it does is that it uses this capturing of this information, which is a feedback from the consumer, to make sure that it keeps the producer consumer interactions good. Because if that ecosystem will have those producers who are not the ones which create value, you cannot remove them unless you have captured this kind of information. So the orchestrator has also to make sure that while if there is a governance, it also captures information enough to make the whole interaction a very streamlined and a very kind of optimized one. So I would not go more. It is more for the corporate customers. So there are different ways in evaluating at different stages how you can keep your risk mitigation as you make this journey, because it is definitely a huge investment and there is an upstream investment that is required, and there has to be some kind of governance and performance scorecard. And there is some sets of input factors, process factors, and output factors, because a little technical. So, and we are also running short of time. And in the interest of the time, I would want to skip this, but you can have a view that there is a scope, there is a cost, there is a resources, there is a participation, and there is a promotion when you are getting into the input. And during the process, the important thing that we have to measure is the feature orientation, the quality of the pipeline for participant initiatives. The collaboration, because when I talked about future orientation, and we always said that the of solutions and offerings that these people give, it emerges and evolves, and therefore the participants' initiative is very important. The collaboration, whether there is a satisfaction, and again we talked about this collaboration a little while back. Reliability of timescales and consequences, because there are a lot of initiatives which are not good initiatives. How quickly are you able to kill them? So these are some of the factors which are very important and which allows you to actually see how your journey of ecosystem, leveraging ecosystem happens over a period of time. And finally, I bring the whole aspect of TCS, and this is where actually the TCS view comes. At the center is an abundance, and as I said, the whole new generation digital born companies are moving from that whole digital mindset and their mindset of competing on scarce resources, but actually thinking into abundance. So the way we think, this is our point of view in TCS, is all the participants today have to have, or in some or other part of their journey, have to embrace risk. Getting into platform, getting in an ecosystem doesn't come without risk. So you have to embrace risk. You have to create exponential value to the customer. Again, I spoke about this in my view also, that it is not about profit maximization, but it is about value maximization. The same thing, we are talking about mass customization or tailoring. So when you are very closer to the customer, when you have an interface to your customer, when your producers and customers are interacting in the quality of the interaction is great, then only you can tailor and mass customize the solution. And I think we all understand Facebook is a master of this. Today, after having 3 billion users, I still believe they are able to curate that kind of mass customization to each and every participant who's on their platform. And the last part, which is the topic of my interest, is leveraging ecosystem. So when I started my presentation, we said that, and in my profile, I have written that we help companies to get into the business 4.0, while industry 4.0 has a smaller circumference. We are talking about business 4.0, which is more than actually factory or premises. You have to start breaking the boundaries of this premises and make it more. So we are definitely playing a very important role in this building abundance. And this building of abundance, definitely being an IT company, the cloud, the intelligence, and because the data is the intelligent democratization is happening, we are helping the customers to provide the solutions to the market in an agile way. And we are also automating some of the interactions. So these are the 4 technology components that we are bringing, so that once we automate, we actually free up the space or free up the efficiencies or the input that people have. And with agility, they are able to bring in more solutions to the system. So the whole concept of business 4.0 is around platform and how do we embrace the platform. I think with this, I will close my presentation, while these are just some of the examples of how we build it with our customers. We actually start with the whole idea of how to map the ideas and how they, different nodes of ideation comes. And then, as I said, with the clay model, we are able to see customers and market, what is core, what is existing, what is adjacent and what is new. Because when you are evolving the business, you cannot directly get into the new market, but you can go into the thing. So this is, we have worked this with Clayton Christensen, and we have evolved this, and this is now something which we have as our asset. And then what we do is, how do we bring the different participants of the ecosystem and create value? So these are like possibilities. So what we do in some of the very curated sessions with C-level people is create an ecosystem map and create possibilities. And again, we leave it to the customers what possibilities they want to, because this ecosystem mapping is not for next 2 years or 3 years, it is for next 10 or 15 years of what kind of end game that you are looking at. While this end game will never be the way you start with, it will always pivot over a period of time, but that is how you start with it. So with that, I will stop my presentation and open the forum for questions. And I'm very happy to answer any of the questions that you can ask on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ashish. If you can just unshare your screen.
Sure.
Stop sharing your screen. Yes, that's great. And thank you very much for sharing such an elaborate presentation. I will say that in the beginning, when the topic was leveraging ecosystem for exponential growth, I could never imagine that, it is such an elaborate presentation which is there. But I will also appreciate that you have made it so simple, which talks about the experience and the rich experience which you carry, and with the passion with which you have presented. It's really appreciable. I will request people, participants, if they have some questions, they can raise hand or they can unmute and ask the question. Just to start with, I was just thinking that you have talked about hyper productivity, and you have talked about creating value creation, and also profit maximization. by leveraging the ecosystem. And you have talked about some of the success stories. And you also said that 6 out of 10 they fail, you know.
Right.
So, can you also share some of the failures of in the ecosystem, and also what are the challenges actually which are faced while
Right.
yes, because that will be helpful for some of the participants.
Yeah. See, sometimes definitely I would not name the customer because no one likes to their failure to be talked about. But we were working with one of the tire companies, and that is where one of the choices of who should orchestrate the platform, and this is one of the stories of failures of who should. So the argument put by the CEO of this company was that the tire is the most intelligent organ of an automotive, and it is the first and I was really amazed, and it's true, and we never understand, because what is automobile? It is all about creating a safe travel. So they wanted to actually build an ecosystem, and they started with it. And in fact, I'm learning from their failure also. They were able to build a system, because building a system is not important. How you bring the participants into this. So when the competing ecosystems are there, what happens is that these people wanted to create a tire, which is wheel in tire, what we call it, and they were not able to bring all the automotive partners to change their base, because that is where it is important. So it is important that when you are talking about the value maximization of the end customer, you have to see how your ecosystem partners also make money out of it. So if you are asking to change the way your automotive body would be to your partner, I think they will not accept it. While this customer had the proposition for their customer, they had a proposition for their customer, because it really is an important part. But because they were not able to convince the partners in the ecosystem, and they could not, and they wanted to orchestrate the whole platform, it never saw the light of the day. Similarly, they wanted to bring in a lot of airline, because their tires are being used by the airlines also. But the point is that the airlines will always feel that, because the information about the aircraft, because the aircraft is the most sensorized thing in the planet, and therefore what aircraft manufacturers would say, or what airlines would say, is that who holds the data. Now they are the ones who will hold the data, and they will not allow the tire company to have entire data. So as I said, what is an investment cost in building the platform, whether your production happens outside your ecosystem? So now here, if this company had to bring all the data related to the runway, friction of the tires, and which airports have which type of tarmac, there is a lot of intelligence in because and then what is the fuel capacity of that particular tail aircraft with that tail. These are the intelligence which they had to buy. Now the question was that, if as an orchestrator, if they will buy this information, they will never be profitable. So it is also, as I said, the check and balances that if you allow the consumers and the producers to exchange freely the information, there is some level of risk there. And therefore, some of the companies will always, and I will give an example of Google here. While it allows Android, but it never allows the maps. It wants to keep the maps with themselves. So what you keep with yourselves and what you allow others made it a very investment high proposition for this tire company, and they never were able to bring in real product. Similarly, I can quote about one of the other companies where it's not taking, and that's where I quoted this whole term of construction, where that the data from the construction is not something that we can really make a lot of use out of that to allow a lot of partners to come into the ecosystem. That's where sometimes building ecosystem, and many a times the failure is most about who controls or who is the prime mover or orchestrator of this ecosystem. And the other thing is also sometimes not in the case which I just talked about, but in some cases it is all about incomplete customer journey. A lot of people are behind making the platform or the digitization of the platform more important than actually understanding the real wicked problems that the customer faces. And halfway they find that there are not enough, because the whole success of the platform is where you are able to bring a lot of producers and consumers into space, and they're not able to bring large part of that ecosystem who are the user ecosystem. So those are some of the things that I have seen very clearly, even in case of John Deere. While we did not work with John Deere directly in that, but what we have seen from very close, initially when they were taking a very product centric view, and they were not thinking beyond their whole area of competence, they were not able to bring. But as they were never the one who had core competency in the seed. But when they wanted to bring Monsanto, the company who have a lot of understanding of the seeds, when they brought in partners who had a dietary view of knowledge of how the food builds into calorie and how the food taste makes people to make certain food more palatable. So this type of people, when they join the ecosystem, they started seeing that there is a value that is being really captured, and more people, more and more farmers come into the ecosystem, because now they understand there is a science behind it. There is a way in which the seeds are curated in the soil, how the weather data is being provided. Now, weather data is something that there is no competency, there is no way why John Deere should be creating, but they are bringing the weather data. They are creating a soil information. They're telling the customers who are in this case farmers, and they are also bringing different retailers, big retailers into the market. So with this, they are no more a company which only builds tractors and farm equipment. They have also, because I am so passionate about this, I remember one story after another. This is also about one other company who was a dealer, and for servicing some of the parts in the mining, they were fearing, because there were a lot of parts which were being put by some local people, because mining has to be kept 24 hours a day. So what they did was they partnered. In this case, they saw them as a competitors, but when they thought about the principles of the ecosystem, what they did was they created this hub and spoke model, where they actually allowed, because the data about these equipments which were running in the mines, including the trucks and the excavators and the sensor data, were allowing them to understand the problem beforehand. And because in mining, if you appreciate that, you cannot lose 1 second, because the tonnage is the actual revenue. So if you are able to reduce the downtime, and this is what this company was giving as a value add to the actual customer, when they onboarded the small time service shops who were using spurious part, when they brought them into the ecosystem, then they told them that you have to now be ready for these number of trucks coming, or these numbers of excavators coming. Then they were ensured about their revenue. And what this company, this dealer did, they built up a supply chain where they were able to create part orders for these small shops. And these shops were not they didn't have to keep the inventory. So this is an ecosystem which even a brick and mortar company can build very easily, and it serves all the purpose. But if the first, and in this case it did not happen, but if they would have thought that this is a competitor, the shops which are closer to the mines are the competitors, I think they would have never built this whole kind of relationship.
Oh, thank you so much. You've talked, you keep giving examples that talks about your involvement in the whole thing.
Right.
Thank you very much for clarifying. And if anybody has any question, I think Ashish will be very happy to. In the meantime, I'll request the participants to put on their cameras with a smile for a beautiful photograph which our staff takes. So if there's no question, I think.
Can I have a question, Rajesh?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Ashish, you gave an example mostly with a product and service related industries.
Right.
I am a service industry, a very small company. So if I want to see that, I mapped your initial slide as only digitalization to externalization. So it became easy for me to remember D2E, which comes alphabetically also correct. So if I want to move that the first step which you said, which was used to be the first step in making an industry, you have to be expert in your core,
Right.
knowledge you should have.
Right.
Now when you are saying the first step is digitalization, so I find myself a little disturbed, and many of the people at 70 years age might find disturbed. So at that point of
No.
time, if you look for a partnership with a
Yeah.
parallel person who helps you in digitalization to externalization and considering the core knowledge with the person,
Right.
what kind of the profit journey or what kind of the timeline journey you can help us to know?
So I think what I missed during my conversation is that the digital platform is, I don't know how you understood it, but digital platform is not the one that you have to always build. The platforms are already there. Now you have to see which partner, and since you have your core, and that is what happens in this whole ecosystem, you have certain thing which is core. Now how does it interconnect with someone who is orchestrating the platform and has an interdependency with you? And that's how the producers and the orchestrators come together. While somebody else might be, and I was giving an example of this automotive company. There is a tire, there is a aircraft manufacturer, there is an automotive, I mean, there is an off-road, and I can tell about the same mining example. There is an off-road tire example. And even a mining company can come on that platform. Now, the thing is that you have a core competency in something. Now, you don't have that luxury of building a platform as a time is an important part. You join that platform where there is an interdependence for the consumer's value or customer's value. This orchestrator wants you. That's how any ecosystem works. That you should, first thing is that there should be an interrelationship. So there are a lot of platforms available. You find what kind of platforms that you want to be a part of producers, so that you also is an important constituent of that, and you are the producers of, because I heard you that you are a part of a service value chain. So you join that ecosystem without investing into this, because nobody is charging if you are creating that value which the consumer wants. And when you connect in this platform with that consumer, you will find that what you started with the core, now you have some more things to offer him. And then you can join some other platform to be a part of that. So this is the whole thing where you can be a contributor, and contributors also make huge money. So you can be contributor, you can be an orchestrator, you can be complementers. So there can be a different role depending upon where you do your profit maximization. And if you think that your product is so good that you would be able to bring some of the consumers to your product, and then you are able to create, and if you have that deep pocket, you can build your own platform where you become the orchestrator of that platform. And which is where I think a lot of failures come into picture, where everyone thinks that unless I become the orchestrator of the platform, I will not reap the money. But which is a fallacy. And I have seen people making huge amount of money. I don't know whether you are aware that in Amazon, the company which has taken over some of the small and medium enterprises, and now what Amazon is selling as white labels, is actually making more profit than Amazon. These are some of the back stories which never come onto the picture, but because what his job is to make interactions more optimized for Amazon. And that's why what it does, it takes the whole control, and it has its own platform in which it aggregates all the small and medium growers or the producers of those items. So this is how I would suggest. I don't know whether I really answered your question, but I can definitely take this more in the offline connect.
No, I think your solution or your answer was absolutely perfect. And when I find that I'm a life and management system coach, and I have joined a platform which is on the global scale, this is what you speak, because they provide a digital platform for me to coach the people across globally. So I think I don't need to invest more on creating a digital platform for myself if there are people who are providing.
But at the same time, if you are learning something from that platform, as someone in this industry, you can also create more content which others can learn. So this is how, when you have something which you know better than many other people, you create that, you produce that value to others, and there are definitely a lot of consumers for your expertise.
Correct. I think I'm very satisfied with the answer you gave.
Thanks,
helped me in what. Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. And if there is any other question, I think we will be very happy to take. Otherwise, we are also coming to the end of the session, and I must thank Mr. Ashish for taking out the time and having a very, once again, saying that elaborate presentation, making it very simple and talking from heart, which comes very naturally from you, talking about how much of involvement you have in the subject. And I also thank all the participants, BMA staff for coordinating the whole session, and also my colleagues from EC and past presidents who have been present in this session. And we look forward to more and more such sessions. Mr. Ashish, it will be very nice to connect with you offline also, and sometimes at a later stage have a physical session in Bombay, which will be a very nice thing.
I would love to do so, because I always like interactions which are very physical connects.
Yes. We will be in touch with you going forward. Sure. And thank you very much for this session.
Thank you, sir.
We will continue to have these sessions going forward also on every Friday with different speakers in different subjects for the benefit of our members. So I will urge on the participants who are not the member of the Bombay Management Association to become life members, which brings a lot of benefits from the BMA platform, which we are a non-profit organization and do for the society at large, disseminating knowledge and experience from the industry to the participants. So thank you very much for joining us.
Rajesh, thank you, there was the leading question from the answer which you and Ashish gave it, because he also said that I would love to be physically available as a part of presentation. Now, digitalization is creating a distance. I have been auditing or assessing on behalf of Quality Council of India remotely, but during this Corona days. But now, when I'm asked to do physically move to go to Chennai or somewhere else, I find a little resistance within me, because there is an unnecessary traveling, etc., and the cost. So I'm just trying to find out whether this is going to be again a future where that you will continue to be on the digitally available format, or you would like to be in the physically available format too.
So, sir, our going forward, our thought is that we will get into the hybrid kind of models. Where some of the programs we will continue to have online, and some of the programs we will do it in our office, or office means physically, which we are saying. So, digital is definitely going to stay. If I say that people will go back to their old ways, that is over now, because 2 years people have learned that, as you rightly said, and that if the hassle of going or traveling can be avoided, people do that. But on the other side, what Ashish was saying also has a value, that when we meet one-on-one, that also creates a lot of bonding and a lot of interaction between the speaker and the presenter and the participants. So we understand and we value both the things. So we are planning to continue with the hybrid model going forward.
Okay.
Thanks. And for those who would have found it a very, very complex topic, I think they can go through the presentation, and I would be happy to answer if the questions come offline also, sir.
Yeah, Ashish, I tell you, our YouTube videos are seen by many people afterwards who are not able to attend, or because we sent the invitation to all our groups. So sometimes, because now people are going to office or somebody is traveling, this is the time. So they view it at a leisure time. And if they have any question, they send a mail and then we can forward it to you later.
Absolutely. I think I would be happy to answer if there are. Thanks everybody. And it was a pleasure and honor to be a part of this whole exercise. And I think it's a very, I would say, it's a purpose-based exercise where we have a collective learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining. Thank you so much.
Thank you.